Hello.
Hi.
Kittywake Productions. Tell me a bit about who you are and what you do in regards to the Dales.
Okay, yeah, cool. So I work for a local charity called Friends of the Dales, and I've worked for them for about 10 years, and my job title is Executive Director, which makes me sound really important, but it's, anyway, that's my job title. It just means I do a bit of everything. So we have quite a small team, and we're based just in the local village at Gargrave. The charity really is about trying to get people to care a little bit more about the countryside, particularly the Yorkshire Dales, and come out and enjoy it, but also look after it and do their bit to try and ensure it's as fabulous as this in the future. That's really what we're about.
So what kind of projects do you do with your charity then? You say you're an environmental based charity.
Yep.
So what does that sort of thing entail? Because I know that you have a magazine, for example, but where does the magazine and then your environmental campaigns sort of interact within the charity?
Oh, that's a really good question. So the magazine, it's a membership magazine, though actually anyone's welcome to read it, and it's a way that we try and talk about the different campaigns that we're running and raise awareness. And two of the big campaigns we've got going this year is a campaign against the use of single-use plastic in the countryside, particularly plastic tree guards. And then the other big campaign is trying to protect our flowery roadside verges so that they're a really good home for bees and butterflies and birds. So we write about those campaigns in the magazine, and we put amazing photographs in, and then we've got a great website and social media as well. So that's how we raise awareness, I guess.
In regards to your single-use plastics with the tree guards, I know that there's a lot of sort of discourse at the moment about other options in terms of tree guards, because especially in the Dales, you have sheep, you have deer, you have rabbits, and in terms of planting, it can be very difficult to actually get these young trees to grow because they'll just be eaten. And so what other viable options are there instead of the single-use plastic tree guards that you sort of see?
Again, a really good question, and until quite recently nobody was really exploring those other options. So I guess there's two ways of looking at it. One way is try and put each little tree in a different sort of tube made out of something better, which isn't plastic. For example, something that will break down, biodegrade, biocompost over time, so it'll protect the tree while it's growing, but after 5 or 10 years it'll just disappear back into the environment, unlike plastic tree guards. So that would be one option, and people have started trialling different sorts of tubes made out of treated sort of cellulose and cardboard and sheep's wool. So yeah, which would be a really great thing because we've got lots of sheep, lots of wool in the Dales. So that's a really exciting development, and we're keeping a really close eye on how that works out. So that's one direction that the campaign could go. But then the other option is putting in deer-proof or rabbit-proof or sheep-proof fencing, and putting a lot more young trees in to start with, and accepting that some of them may fail, some of them won't survive, but in 10, 20 years down the line, if you like, by survival of the fittest, you will have a young wood starting to take in the landscape. So there's two different ways of approaching it, and both those techniques are being tried out in the Dales by other charities, and we're keeping a close eye on them, seeing what works best.
I know, for example, that the National Park Authority is looking into this, and I know that you work with the National Park, but also you are a sort of critical friend. Yes. Is there any sort of interaction with the park? What is the park's policies? Because obviously, being in the National Park Authority is sort of one of the commanding forces in the park, and in order to put in these new measures, it would have to have authority sort of cooperation.
Again, it's what I think what you've hit on there is that there's lots of different organisations all need to knit together to solve this problem. So we're all playing catch up, because it's estimated, in fact the National Park Authority itself has provided the estimate, there's probably about 2 or 3 million plastic tubes in the environment, in the Dales, from the legacy of tree planting over the last 10 or 20 years, say. And only now that different alternatives and the research and the industry is starting to look at it in a different way, are those options available to the people that support the tree planting. So the National Park Authority, which does a great job supporting putting new woodlands and new trees into the landscape, is looking at those in detail. I mentioned other charities, there's the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust, the Woodland Trust, and I think the National Trust now have just announced that they, after the end of this year, 2020, they're not going to use plastic tree guards when they plant in the countryside in the UK anymore, which is amazing. And it really takes, you know, the big players to sort of stand up and make a commitment like that. So our campaign has been going on for sort of 3 or 4 years, and everything is now gathering ahead of steam. Everybody's realising how damaging plastic is in the environment, because it breaks down into microplastics, which get into the rivers and into the sea, into the marine environment, and then they get back through the food chain into us. So it's really important that we stop putting plastic into the environment now and explore these other options.
Do you have any sort of ideas or suggestions about the fact that you have this enormous amount of single-use plastic? I'm running away. Do you have anything to do, because there's this enormous amount of single-use plastic that is currently in the Dales, within the plantations and the planting? What happens to that now that the new methods are coming in? What happens to this old tree plastic guard that is...
Well, what we really like to see, and it's a phrase which is used quite a lot in environmental sort of organisations, is the polluter pays principle. So what that really means is, if you've manufactured the plastic or you've paid to have the plastic put out there, it would be great if it was part of your responsibility to come back and work with the landowner, collect it and take it away again. So some of the key industry organisations are looking at this, and one of the biggest manufacturers, which is Tubex, which creates the plastic tree guards, has been working with us and with other organisations in the Dales to run collection days. We organise the collection days, and they're just a trial at the moment to see how difficult it is to get the plastic out of the environment, get it to a central location, get it loaded up on a big Arctic provided by the industry, and most importantly actually taken to a proper recycling plant. So that's just been started to try out over the last couple of years. So we're really pleased that they're standing up and saying, yes, we want to be part of the solution.
Was one of those trials up at Thrushfield? Am I remembering that, or is that remembering that wrong?
There could have been things happening at Thrushfield. The ones that I've been involved with our charity is just before we went into lockdown last year, we had a tree tube collection day up at Long Preston at a private woodland, and we went in early March and we took out a load of plastic tree tubes, which is actually quite hard work.
They're quite bulky.
They're quite bulky, and quite often they've sort of grown around the tree. So it's quite a sort of hands-on, it's quite, you can get in there and sort of rive these things out and then bundle them all up and put them in big dumpy sacks, and then they get collected and taken for recycling. And in a few weeks' time, we're going to go back to that woodland. So we're looking for more volunteers if you want to come out and have a go about really making a difference in the environment. Come and join us on the 7th of October. Yay.
So your second big campaign is the Roadside Verges. And I know a little bit about that, but not much. But what is the importance of Roadside Verges? Why do you care about Roadside Verges?
Why do we care about Roadside Verges? Right. In a nutshell, they're what's left of our hay meadows. So a few hundred years ago, we had amazing hay meadows in the Dales that were full of loads of different wildflowers and plants and bees and butterflies. They supported insects and thus birds and bats and absolutely everything. And because of little fly in my mouth.
Insects, that's the destruction of nature there.
That's what we're talking about. So because of sort of modernisation in farming, understandably, farmers have switched to higher production ways of managing their grasslands, and unfortunately that's meant that we've lost these really rich hay meadows. But just outside the hay meadows, if you like, over the dry stone wall, just beside the road, there's like little bits of hay meadows hanging on that we call roadside verges. But if we don't actually look after them as if they were a hay meadow, in other words, we cut them at the right time of the year, and ideally we take the stuff that we've cut, which I think is called the arisings.
Ooh.
Rather lovely sort of phrase there, the
yeah.
arisings. If we don't take the arisings away, it just encourages like less valuable plants like thistles and docks and nettles and stuff. But if you manage them as if they were a mini hay meadow down the side of the road, not only do they look incredible and they're a home to all this amazing wildlife, but it's almost like we're clinging on to something that's really, really special about the Dales that sadly we haven't got very much of.
It's part of the cultural identity of the Dales, I feel, the hay meadows, in a way, which is something that has been lost. You have the dry stone walls, you have the rolling hills with the Swaledale sheep, and the dry stone pavements and things like that. But the hay meadows, you don't see them anymore.
What's a dry stone pavement, Ruth?
I don't know. Limestone pavement.
Limestone pavement.
Limestone pavement.
That's a new thing. Let's go and find some dry stone pavement. Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. And the thing is about the Dales and other amazing sort of national parks in our country is that they've been created by centuries of human endeavour.
Yeah.
By farmers, by people looking after woodland, people managing the rivers. All of this has created not just a wildlife landscape, but a cultural landscape. It's not wild in the sense that it's untouched by people. It's been created by people. And if we want that to carry on into the future, we've got to, get back in there and manage it in a way that keeps those things going, but really importantly saves the wildlife, because taking hay meadows as an example, probably since the Second World War, we've lost 95, 96, 97% of the hay meadows in Britain. And the tiny little bit that's left, a lot of it's here in the Yorkshire Dales, so they are incredibly important, incredibly special.
Yeah.
So that's why we're campaigning for the Roadside Verges. And one of the things we've done is we've been trying to find out who actually is responsible for managing and cutting different bits of verges, and it's a really complicated story.
I would assume it was the council. I would assume it was, say, Craven, or I don't know the other is.
Yeah, it's all of those. It's North Yorkshire County Council, and we've been working really closely with them, and they've been really supportive. And then it's other councils, could be the district councils, could be the parish councils, could be a local landowner, or the responsibility could have been lost in the mists of time. So it's a really complicated jigsaw. So what we've tried to do is one of our really good volunteers, Dr. Ann Reedshaw, who's a plant scientist, has been trying to map out who's responsible for looking after different bits of roadside verges, and the sort of like top of the list is North Yorkshire County Council. So she's had some really good meetings with them to look at where the most important wildlife verges are that are left in the Dales, and try and tailor-make the management of those, the cutting and the mowing and looking after them, and monitor what happens to see if that encourages the bees and the butterflies and all the rest of it, all the fabulous things.
So what sort of plants are you looking for in these verges? What is the ideal verge that you would look at a verge and go, that's a brilliant verge for insects and for butterflies and for everything?
I guess if I was to talk about the ideal verge, it probably falls into two categories. So you can either look for a verge where its spring flowers are amazing, and then once the spring flowers have flowered, you're cutting it, or you're looking for a verge where the summer flowers are the most important, and you're not cutting it until they've flowered. So they tend to be an either-or situation. It's quite difficult to get something that starts as a spring verge and carries on to be a summer verge, because it depends where you do the cutting. So it's all there, and I guess that's one of the things that's amazing about the Dales. You've got this big stuff like the brilliant landscape and the cultural heritage, and then you can really focus down on just a flower or a butterfly and enjoy that just as much.
That's brilliant. Save the verges.
Save the verges. our campaign. So next year, looking ahead, we're hoping to do even more publicity on our social media pages, and this year we wrote to all the parishes, all the parish councils and parish meetings in the Dales, and to start the conversation about how were they looking after their own verges, and lots of them wrote back and told us what they were doing, which is brilliant. And so we're going to write to them all again, and we're going to encourage people to send us in their pictures of well managed verges for wildlife, and there perhaps verges which have been cut too early and the flowers have been lost, so we can just get much more data about
Brilliant.
bit of citizen science, get people out there, really safely though, obviously, because the roadside verges are on roads,
and lots of these are very narrow single roads in the Dales.
Yeah, so we don't want people sort of going out and putting themselves at risk, but, with care. And I think particularly people who live in the Dales, because they'll know, perhaps the best time of day to go out, they'll know, how to take care, they'll know where to stand to get a photograph. So we'd really like local people who live in the area to get involved with the campaign as well, because, they're your verges.
So how would you go about contacting you in terms of doing that? Where can we find you? Do you have social media?
We do have social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. We also have a website, and we'll also put my email address up at the end of the film, if that's all right. So we just welcome, all contributions, and a lot of these topics to do with the Dales, they can be quite controversial. People have different viewpoints, but we pride ourselves in our charity of sort of being open to listening to different opinions and trying to provide a forum for people to talk about some of these difficult things, and not get too polarised, and share our knowledge and just share our love of the Dales, really. That's what it's all about. That's the thing.
It's brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, well,
It's been a
thank
fascinating conversation.
Oh, you're so lucky.
I know, it's gorgeous weather. I'm hoping I'm not sunburned.